Welcome to Between the Brackets. I'm Yaron Koren, and I have a very special guest for this episode, Ike Hecht, also known as Itzhak or Isaac, but in the business world, he generally goes by Ike. Ike is the CTO of my own MediaWiki consulting company, WikiWorks, and he's also the CTO and founder of his MediaWiki consulting company, WikiTeq. Ike was an aspiring rabbi back in 2007 when I discovered him because he was running a wiki on the side that used semantic MediaWiki and my own extension, Page Forms, back then known as Semantic Forms. He asked some good questions on the mailing lists, and I liked the logical way he structured his wiki. So in 2008, I plucked him from obscurity and invited him to do consulting jobs alongside me. And then the next year, I asked him to be a consultant for my then new company, WikiWorks. So you could say I basically made him the entrepreneur he is today. That's one way to look at it anyway. Another is that I gave Ike the same opportunity I've given to a lot of other people, and Ike was the one who absolutely seized it to its fullest potential and turned WikiWorks into what I think is a powerhouse of consulting and hosting for MediaWiki. And now he's done the same thing with WikiTeq. At the moment, he's transitioning away from day-to-day project management work for WikiWorks so that he can more fully devote himself to WikiTeq. But I expect that we'll still be working closely together for a long time to come. It's taken a while for him to be on this podcast, which has become sort of a running joke for us. But I'm glad he's on now because now we have a much better sense for what his role is going to be like in the future. I'm looking forward to talking about that and a lot more with him. So Ike, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Aaron. It's great to finally be on. And I'm sorry that we lose that running joke with my appearance here.
Yeah.
But I want to just completely agree with your take on that you made me the entrepreneur I am. You certainly gave me the start. And like you said, you've done it for many people in a very selfless way. And it's something that I will always be grateful for. I did have a background in computer science. I got a degree in computer science and I was a programmer. So at least I knew something before you came along, but absolutely on a professional level in MediaWiki, I owe everything to you. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That's really, I mean, that's profound. The relationship we have and you're modest, but I really think it goes both ways. You've done a lot for me and for WikiWorks as well, but we'll get to all of that. Well, on to more pedestrian things. I believe I know the answer to this, but where do you live?
I live in Boca Raton, Florida, which is becoming a very, very popular spot for basically everybody to move to right now. It's been exploding in growth and along with all of Florida, but I think particularly South Florida.
Yeah, that's it seems to be one of those places that everyone is moving to with the pandemic and lockdown. I guess there was a trend even before then. It's always Florida's always mentioned alongside North Carolina and a few other places. Do you see that day to day that people are moving in? In general and as a tech hub?
I'm not so dialed into the tech community, but definitely in general, I'm seeing new faces all the time. The houses are being snapped up and the prices are skyrocketing. So it's definitely happening.
Yeah. In Florida, interestingly, not that close to you, but Florida is sort of the birthplace of Wikipedia and MediaWiki in a sense, because that's where Jimmy Wales used to live in St. Augustine, which is way up on the coast, I think, but it's an interesting sort of return, I guess.
Yeah, and Boca Raton, is a tech hub. There's a lot of tech going on here.
Oh, really? Okay. I knew that about Miami. I didn't know Boca Raton specifically.
Oh, no, it's big. It's not quite Silicon Valley, but you give it time. We don't have any state income tax, and they do, among other reasons people are coming. So watch out.
Well, yeah, okay. Wait, I thought you were serious, but that last bit sounded a little sarcastic, so now I'm not sure anymore. But
I'm serious that it is a major tech hub, but it's not quite Silicon Valley, although it is home to WikiTeq.
Yeah.
You're seeing that I'm mixing the reality with the sarcastic.
Yeah, okay.
It's all true.
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, we could talk about Silicon Valley and the Bay Area and California and all that, but maybe just best to leave it at that. But I definitely think you have a lot of advantages. Florida has a lot of advantages for the future. I mean, well, I want to talk a little bit the past. You started out in this whole world because you were running a site that used Semantic Mediawiki and some of these other extensions. I don't know. The site's still up as far as I know. I don't know if you want to talk about it at all.
Well, it depends on what part do you want to talk about. On a technical level, it's not something I can be proud of because it's still mostly running code that I put up in like 2007. So if anybody analyzes that code, they will definitely not want to use my companies for anything, either company I'm involved with, WikiWorks or WikiTeq. It was written when I was a beginner, but you have to learn somewhere, and it was a great place to learn. And it was a directory of dating spots, which was very much needed back then. It's hard to imagine, but there were very few places like Yelp or I don't think Google Places even existed. And even if they weren't very popular. They weren't very big.
Right.
So, in a certain sense, this was a competitor to Yelp back then, and somehow they got the best of us. It was a very small competitor to Yelp.
Okay. Yeah, but you managed to do quite a bit with it. You put out a book with that with information from the site.
Yeah,
I remember.
Yeah, we put out two books, which were basically PDF versions of the site.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I guess you're not going to plug it. Well, it doesn't matter. For the site. That's
well, it's still in use. It's still in use.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't say I give it very much attention. It's kind of like the shoemaker's children going barefoot.
Sure. Yeah.
I make much more money fixing everybody else's site than I do fixing my own.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I liked it even back then, and even now. I think it stood out for me because it really. I mean, it was just straightforward. There's nothing strange about the structure, which was not the case with a lot of other sites. I think. Back in those days, the people who were using Semantic Mediawiki, a lot of them came from the semantic web world. I've talked about this before, but at those early Semantic Mediawiki conferences, SMW cons, it was a pretty heavy academic presence. There were a lot of people there from academia or people who were otherwise interested in the semantic web. Or people who are just hackers and interested in, trying out the software and all of that. But I felt I was coming to it more from the business world and, trying to solve real problems. And it felt like you were coming at it from a similar direction. Yeah, we both, I guess, got out, neither of us really caught on to the whole semantic web concept.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to know about, the academic semantic side of things, but I don't, and, it's worked pretty well. I'm coming more from the computer science direction, data structures and databases and things like that, and just using Semantic Mediawiki for its database capabilities, which are very good. Cargo also. And it's basically, I don't know if we're ticking all the academic boxes, but from, a computer science perspective, if it works, it works.
Yeah. No, I have absolutely that same kind of. I'd like to think I'm taking that same kind of pragmatic approach. I guess everyone likes to think of themselves as a pragmatist, but I wanted to ask about your business skills / business drive. That's something that I thought you brought to WikiWorks that was really needed, but it was also really needed in the entire enterprise MediaWiki / semantic MediaWiki world, especially at that point. Yeah, I mean, you were at that point trying to be a rabbi. There wasn't really anything on paper that would suggest that you would really be, you know, oh, sorry for the beeps. That suggested that you would be, you know, a serious businessman, I guess. So, do you have any sense for where that drive came from?
You know, necessity is the mother of invention. I come from a technical background. I have no business training whatsoever, and I'm learning on the job. And, you know, as I read, you know, business books and things like that, sometimes I feel like that's the best way to learn is on the job. I don't feel like, you know, I'm particularly talented or knowledgeable. The one thing I have is that I've done every mistake in the book and I've managed to not repeat it. You know, I try to learn from my experiences. So yeah, I was focused on being a rabbi, but I was also focused on MediaWiki. You know, I was kind of like having two full-time jobs, and really just trying to throw myself into both of them. And yeah, you know, as you know, I started as a developer with WikiWorks, and a few years ago, I kind of took over most of operations. I'd say, you know, from the
Sure.
development perspective as the project manager. And you know, at a certain point, I wasn't able to like handle certain technical tasks on my own. So, you know, we brought in different developers to try and help me out. And therefore, I had to learn how to manage developers. And eventually, there were too many project management tasks for me to handle myself. So we brought in different project managers, and I became CTO because now I was supervising project managers too. And, you know, and when I really started focusing on WikiTeq, which was like a couple of years ago, I had to learn marketing and, you know, things like that. And I'm still learning. And it's not really because I know what I'm doing. It's because once I'm faced with a task, I make it my business to figure it out and bring in people who know much better than I do, especially, you know, certain MediaWiki tasks. It's just stuff that nobody can know everything, right? Nobody can know everything about the semantic web and about server administration and monitoring and Linux administration. There's so much that you can't really be an expert in everything. I try to, you know, because I used to be on my own. I used to be kind of a one-man show developer. So I feel like I know a little bit about everything, and that helps me bring in people who know a lot more about everything to help out and hopefully form a team, and you know, we end up with something much better when we're all working together.
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, in the tech world, I mean, there are obviously people who know tremendous amount, but there's really no way to know everything. I was just reminded of that recently. Somebody was asking me about the number of inodes on a server, and I realized I have no idea what an inode is. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, I mean, well, I want to talk about this business, just the whole business instinct. I feel like there's something, obviously you can learn it, but I feel like there has to be a sort of an innate instinct for making money. It's a skill. I mean, it's a skill like anything else. I mean, do you have any explanation for, you know, for how you came upon that instinct? I mean, obviously everyone has to pay the bills and so forth, but is there anything beyond that?
I don't think so. I think there are certain skills that just, you know, by nature you're able to gravitate to. I'll take a example that I hope isn't too political, but you know, this movement to teach everybody to code. I think that's a terrible idea. You know, I've seen a lot of people coding. Some of them do it very well, and some of them do it very poorly. And even people who've been trained in how to do it well, they're going to end up doing it very poorly. And I think it's just, you know, you have certain skills, you have certain things that you're good at, and in theory, with enough training and enough hours and enough trial and error, you may get pretty good. But is that really a good idea? Is that where we should be bringing people to? Should we really be teaching people who aren't natural fits for coding how to code? I mean, it's nice as a hobby, maybe, to give everybody a little bit of basic idea, but not everybody should be learning how to code. And I think with business also, I've seen people, even though I don't have that background, I don't have that training, I've seen, people running their business a certain way and, saying that can't make any sense. And I can't tell you how do I know that?
Yeah.
It's just, right. It's exactly what you said. It's instinct. It's just something that I feel I can kind of guess at and get right most of the time.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with you about coding. And I think it's not so much a matter of intelligence, even. It's just a matter of,
definitely.
Yeah, there's a certain personality type or types that I think do well with coding.
Right.
Really, yeah.
In other words, coding is no different than anything else. I mean, some people are just really good with language and some people are really not good, but they may be excellent in math and some people may be very, very not good at math.
Yeah.
So, people should be doing what their strengths are. And coding actually is very similar to math. If you're good at math, there's a good chance you'll be good at coding. If you're not good at math, then it's probably not the field for you.
I'm actually not sure about the math thing at all. I mean, I'm pretty good at math, but this is interesting. Actually, this came up in the episode with Grant Ingersoll, because he has a whole podcast about talking to programmers, and especially programmers who have a background that's in something unrelated and just got into it. He was big on the idea that anyone can be a programmer. I'm more with you that it's only specific people, but I don't think you necessarily have to be what is it, left brain or right brain, whatever it is, kind of thing. Because especially because there are lots of different kinds of programming and lots of different kinds of jobs in the software field. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's possible, there's so many different aspects of programming. You may have some aspect that's not related to math at all. And, somebody could be really not good at math and be okay with, or very good at that part of programming. But, I would ask for people who say everybody should be coding, what would you say that for every skill? Can everybody learn how to be a doctor? And can everybody,
yeah.
And even if you could, is that what's best for that person?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, not to stay on this whole topic, because I know it started as just a metaphor, but I find the whole concept of STEM, encouraging everyone to go into STEM really strange. Also, it seems to me like STEM, even though that's a collection of 100 different occupations or something, it's really just a synonym for programming, as far as I can tell. They always picture the little kids wearing lab coats and with holding up a test tube or something with full of blue or green liquid, but really it seems like they're just trying to get everyone to become a programmer, as far as I can tell. Yeah, I don't know.
I have a lot more to say, but
okay, fine.
I shouldn't be saying it.
What were we talking about? Yeah, well, fine. So with business skills, it's not like you had a great grandfather who owned a textile company or whatever. That you passed. You have
I mean, my parents have have been in business for a long time. I guess we can credit them, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. But I can't say that I was part of the family business and learned business from there. I don't know. Maybe it puts it into the genetics or the bloodstream. So maybe that's
that's interesting. Right.
Ultimately, it's instinct.
Yeah, instinct. I think there is something to be said for just getting over the what's it called? There's a certain resistance to making money for some people, that it's kind of a dirty business to be in, of asking for money and receiving money and all of that.
Right.
And
right.
A lot of people would just rather avoid that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that might have to do with like where you are, I guess, on the political spectrum and things like
Well,
that.
maybe the political spectrum. Maybe maybe there's a political element to it. Maybe it's just
Yeah.
it's what you grow up around.
Yeah, I don't view money as necessarily a bad thing. I view money as a good thing. Some people may think that's
Yeah,
it's a
no, I'm not
horrible thing
talking
to
about.
say.
Sorry, we're really getting sidetracked here again. But yeah, no, I'm not talking about viewing money as. Obviously, there are people who view money and wealth as suspect. But just in terms of a lot of people would rather just get a paycheck and not have to
Right.
deal with everything relating to sales and marketing and entrepreneurship and all of that.
Right. Okay. So that's bringing us back. Yeah, I wanted to be a rabbi as much as I could. So if you want to do that, it's very hard to do that with a 9 to 5, which these days is very rarely a 9 to 5. I wanted as much flexibility as I could give myself. And running a business is really not for everybody, even more than coding. I mean, there's a lot of pressure. There's nobody who's guaranteeing you a paycheck, and
right, sure.
you have, I mean, other people's paychecks on your shoulder, not just your own, and that's a very difficult thing to do. So, it's got to be worth that trade-off where I'm going to be willing to take the risk and all that responsibility and all the stress and everything that comes along with running a business. And it's all worth it for me for whatever reason. For me, it was the flexibility and the independence. Um, it's more than worth it for me. And actually, I've never really had a real job, if you can call it that. I started freelancing, along with you when I was pretty young. I never had another computer job, that's for sure. You know, it it allowed me to do what I wanted, when I wanted, where I wanted. I've been able to move around the country with no problem whatsoever because the job just comes with me. So these days, I guess it's easier to freelance, and you don't have to have your own business in order to do that. But having your own business certainly is the ultimate flexibility. Although with the responsibility that can also cut down on flexibility, and you have to know how to do it right. And it takes a lot of getting it wrong in order to know how to do it right.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't sure about that. That was my guess that you've never had a real job, but I wasn't sure. But yeah.
You didn't want to say that.
I didn't want to say it, right? Yeah, but I mean, as far as paying all the bills and so forth, I know WikiTeq has actual employees. I don't want to get too much into current state of business, but it seems like things are going fine. Things are going well these days.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate, and one of the reasons we're very fortunate is there's not that much competition out there for MediaWiki companies, especially in the U.S. There are some great companies, but nobody really trying to dominate the market. I know, you've demonstrated already on the podcast how willing you are to help others, and we try to work well with others also. I think, in general, it's really nice. I think globally, the MediaWiki community, we're all very friendly with each other, even if we are competitors. I think that's really good because it really helps everybody. And, we've been fortunate that, it hasn't been difficult. There are very few barriers to entry, I guess, to be in MediaWiki. And also the fact that I've been around for a really long time helps us a lot. I've been able to break in, I guess, slowly. And WikiTech's doing good. We've got a few people full-time, a few people part-time, a few people on contract, and it's hopefully contributing to the world of MediaWiki in a positive way.
Yeah, sure. No, yeah, absolutely. You brought up a few interesting things there. It is true. Well, it's true that there's a very low cost of entry, a barrier to entry. you know, we haven't, I mean, we haven't really spent anything on marketing or sales. We've talked about it, but, you know, aside from the occasional, you know, swag for with our company logo on it. And it's true that we're two of, I don't know, 3 or 4 MediaWiki consulting companies in the US, which is strange in its own way. I want to get to that later, the, you know, the current state of the industry, if you can call it that. So yeah, so that's definitely been great for us. Obviously things are different in Europe, but as far as or I should say the US and Canada, or I should say the Americas, because really all of the US, and Canada, and Latin America are you know, are pretty low on MediaWiki consulting solutions at the moment, companies.
Yeah, definitely. I think that you said it best. You know, the MediaWiki companies, we're not really competing with each other because the potential for MediaWiki is so big that we're really competing with the non-MediaWiki solutions, SharePoint and Confluence, etc. You know, the share of the pie that is MediaWiki is very small. You know, and we're not really fighting each other for that. It's the rest. And
Yeah,
I think
sure.
it's great for everybody that, you know, there's so much out there that we can all work together. And I would say WikiTeq is definitely moving into the marketing and advertising area, I guess. We're slowly moving in that direction, and hopefully we can bring those non-MediaWiki people to MediaWiki.
Yeah, and yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And even talking about Confluence and SharePoint is really just scratching the surface. I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm guessing you feel the same way. Basically, anyone who has data could potentially, anyone who
Yes.
needs to manage their data could potentially benefit from using MediaWiki, which is basically everyone.
Yeah, I mean, there are very few companies in the world that wouldn't benefit from using MediaWiki.
Yeah, I mean,
Some
right.
of
I mean,
them,
yeah, companies and organizations. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and some of them are using some sort of enterprise class competitor to MediaWiki, which might be working for them, right? And maybe even working better for MediaWiki. Right now, MediaWiki as an enterprise level product, you know, it might be a little bit shaky. I don't know if it's there yet, although, you know, there are companies definitely giving it a great effort, and I think we'll get there. But, you know, for companies trying to judge MediaWiki against other platforms, it's a tough sell for MediaWiki if they're looking for that enterprise level software and support and things like that. I think we will get there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, obviously it depends on the use case. Well, that brings us to something I definitely wanted to talk about, which is this project we're both involved in, Project Canasta, which has not been mentioned on this podcast yet. So this seems like a good time to discuss it and, you know, sort of publicly announce it, even though it's already publicly, information's out there for people who want to see it. But I mean, I could explain it, but I'm curious to hear how you would explain it and what you think of it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I didn't want to spill the beans. I was hinting to it when I said that we all kind of work together as a
Oh,
global
that's
community.
interesting. Okay, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
this is
it's already
definitely a
on
big part of it.
MediaWiki.org. It's not private exactly, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, my understanding of Project Canasta, not that I'm the expert on it, I think you are, but I would explain it as understanding that the competitors to MediaWiki are vast and have a lot more resources than we do. And our only hope of really becoming competitive to those solutions is if all of the MediaWiki companies work together. So it's a collaboration of companies in Europe and the US and everywhere, trying to come up with something that easily allows enterprise users to use MediaWiki for specific tasks. Basically a way to bundle MediaWiki functionality into one simple product that can be marketed on its own and eventually maybe marketed as a suite of solutions. How did I do?
Yeah, pretty well.
Okay.
I would say I would say, I mean, that sounded a little vague. Um, uh,
Well, I don't think anything about Canasta is written in stone yet, so that's why
yeah,
I
no,
was
no, but
deliberately vague.
yeah, yeah. I mean, well, I mean, explaining it from the perspective of somebody who'd be interested in the actual output of Project Canasta. And by the way, that's just the name of the project. That's not the name of the output, whatever name that gets or names. Um, uh, but yeah, the idea is we know that MediaWiki can compete with a lot of these solutions for all these different acronyms: CRM, BPM, uh, PM, project management, knowledge management, CMS, ERP, and QM. I don't know. We could keep going. Where the M in all of those is management. So it's all sort of subsets of data management. But 99% of people who are looking for a solution wouldn't even think about MediaWiki, let alone consider its pros and cons, because it just doesn't show up in the conversation. So the idea is that we would create packages of forms and templates and all of that that could be used with MediaWiki that would produce a solution that's comparable to any of those. Yeah, which is essentially what you were getting at. So from the perspective of an end user, they can say, well, for BPM, I can use this product, which costs $50 per month or something, or this other product which is open source, which seems fine, or I could use whatever name we give it, Canasta BPM, although it probably wouldn't be called that. Which it really is just MediaWiki plus data structures, but it would all be open source. And at that point, once you have a name and a concept, then you can really start to market it that way. I want to disagree with one thing you said, which is that we can't it can't get done unless we all work together, which is hopefully not the case. Obviously, the more people are involved, the generally the better. But I think this is even something I mean, we've gotten people involved in it, but I think this is something that even just a small group of us could put together if we needed to.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think any one of these companies could on their own come up with a competitor. It just makes it easier to be a bigger competitor, I guess, if we're all together.
Yeah.
I mean, the challenge is getting lots of people with lots of different ideas to work toward the same goal. So that's a big challenge, and we'll have to see where it goes. I think we're all wondering where it's going to go.
Yeah, yeah, and I definitely don't want the effort of trying to get people involved to make the whole task more difficult to outweigh the effort of actually just putting it together, the actual software together. We talked about potentially charging for it, for whatever add-ons. You were very much on the side of keeping everything open source, which I agree with. I I don't know. Do you want to talk about that? Do you are you you don't come off as an open source purist. We've never really talked about open source as an ideal, as a sort of a quasi political ideal.
Right.
I mean, what attracts you to open source and to releasing things as open source?
Yeah, so that ties back, I think, very heavily into people's attitudes toward money. I'm a big advocate for open source because I think that it helps people, and that's a great thing. But ultimately, it's not the solution for everything. Right? Sometimes it's good to keep something proprietary and then sell it and make money off of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good to keep it as open source and then sell it and make money off of it. The answer is going to depend on which product you're using, but there is much more to the world than making money. And you have to try to also, if you're using open source software and you're profiting off of it, so then I think it generates also a responsibility to give back and to contribute to the open source movement. And definitely as a company, we try to, wherever we can, release our software as open source. And it's very rare that we keep anything proprietary, but there are definitely some things that we've been working very hard on that, at least for now, we're going to keep to ourselves. And at some point, if it becomes discovered that this is useful for everybody, if it gets released, we'll release it. I would say, so I'm not an open source purist, just an advocate.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you touched on a few, good reasons to go with open source. But do you feel like in this particular case of having these products, creating these products and so forth, that it makes sense to go open source, despite the fact that it would cost us money, or that ultimately it's also, there's our self-interest should also push us in the direction of open source?
Well, it's also self-interest, because if everybody's contributing to open source, so then maybe, you point to individual projects and say, well, I could have made money if I didn't release it as open source. But when you're a part of the movement, so then the movement generates software that profits everybody who contributes to it. So, it's in your self-interest also to contribute to the open source movement. But, I would say, I lean more toward the responsibility part of it. You have to be able to, pay the bills and, run the company and pay your consultants, and all those things, require money, and they're all very good things and all good reasons to try to be making money and try to, be raising your, gross margins and profits and everything like that. But ultimately, especially if you're a company in MediaWiki is open source, you have a responsibility really to contribute to the movement. It's just, being a good citizen, I guess. So,
Yeah.
I don't think it goes so far as to say, well, now everything has to be open source, but
Yeah.
whatever you can, whatever makes sense, right? You're not losing by contributing to open source, because I think that when everybody's in it together, when everybody's contributing, it gives you a much better product in the end.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with that. And, if we were to make these products, proprietary, and say, if you want to have this form and data structure for being able to do business process management or something, but you have to pay, whatever amount people have to pay for it, it just means that no one else can ever really improve it other than us.
Right.
Yeah, that's really a big thing. Sure.
So, yeah, and that's kind of, the big selling point of MediaWiki over a lot of those enterprise solutions is going to be that it's open source, right? And that it's very easy to modify things. Page forms is a great example. You can quickly get things up, quickly change things, and you can customize as you want. So, to then make it all proprietary, I think is losing a very big advantage that MediaWiki has. If it's all proprietary, so then why use it? There are these all tried and tested software backed by massive companies.
Sure. Yeah. So we're working on this Project Canasta thing. I'm curious what your view is of, say, 5 years from now. What ideally would things look like? I would say 10 years from now, but maybe that's too far in the future. It'll really be embarrassing to go back and see what we predicted. But in your ideal world, what would things look like, say, 5 years from now? As far as what we're actually selling, and I guess if you wanted to get into the size of the market, but obviously we want it to be as many customers as possible. But maybe your role, I guess.
I think Project Canasta is focused on the technical side of things, which is very important. on the technical side of things, we need a way to be able to share packages. It's something that I sort of presented about in EMW Con in San Francisco, about, you know, the need to have like a repository for not just extensions, but also, you know, different semantic MediaWiki pages and cargo pages that provide functionality and can be packaged together with extensions. And I think you've done a great service again to everybody by making page exchange. And WikiTeq also is working on its own solution to things like that, to try and package everything up so that they can be version controlled, they can be shared, that people can all contribute to it, can all improve the functionality. And I think Project Nest is very heavily built on that idea, making it easy to install distribution. And then once you have that distribution, to be able to easily install different modules as packages. And that's all important, but I don't really think that's the biggest hurdle for MediaWiki. I don't think it's on the technical side. I think the biggest one is going to be support. I mean, people want to know that there's someone there that can actually help them when they have a problem, that can provide answers to technical questions, can be there when things go wrong, to provide training for users. And I think that's something that WikiTeq is very heavily moving into, trying to do that kind of support. And WikiWorks as well, it's offering some excellent support, and trying to improve it to the point that we can really say this is enterprise level support that you would get from anybody else. And I think the other thing, of course, is marketing. And I don't think Project Nest is focusing on that. I mean, obviously you need a product first. Marketing is going to be a big part of it. You know, you could have the greatest technical solution and the greatest support for it, but if nobody knows about it, you know, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
So, you know, I would say, you know, my vision in 10 years is to have all three of those working together.
I was wondering where that was. Okay.
It may, you know, it may go faster than 10 years. We may not get there in 10 years. I know that this is what we're actively working on. We're working, I think, you know, outside of Project Nest, I think we're working very heavily on all three of these prongs, I guess you can call it. And I think we've made some headway.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was wondering. I was wondering if you were going to get into things like, you know, one thing that's sort of been discussed at every part of this this project is the idea of rebranding MediaWiki, and that's come up on this podcast before. So, you know, instead of MediaWiki, it's Fluffy or whatever it is. And you know, you say, you know, use Fluffy BPM for all of your BPM needs, which has strengths and weaknesses. But I wonder if you think at some point, if you would guess that at some point, our companies or whoever else that'll be the default to instead of saying we provide MediaWiki solutions, we provide Fluffy solutions, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that right now MediaWiki is the brand because there is nobody else, but it shouldn't be that way. I think that as time goes on, someone's going to come up with Fluffy. I think Blue Spice is already there. Blue Spice is its own brand, and I think it used to be, you know, more marketing that it was based on MediaWiki. I think now it's moved a little bit more away from that, which you know, either way is fine. I mean, if once you build your own brand to the point that it's, you know, competitive, where you don't have to say we're based on MediaWiki because people know about your brand too. So why not? I mean, there's no reason to say you're based on MediaWiki. You know, you could just say we're based on whatever we are, Fluffy, and then people know what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, would you get what would you guess though? You know, 5 or 10 years from now, if you had to guess.
If I had to guess what it would be called, or what it would be.
I don't know. In terms of, I'm not sure where this is going really. Well, I mean, that's.
I think that the direction right now is that all the different companies are trying to create their own individual distributions and trying to brand them. That's my sense.
Right.
And Project Nest is kind of trying to move away from that, even though I think that everything is happening in parallel. You know, Project Nest is trying to say, well, we're going to create like a bigger distribution than all of ours. In 5 years, we'll see. May the best solution win. I think it's great to have everyone working on their own thing, and we'll end up with something very good with everybody trying, to compete with each other in a certain sense.
Yeah. Do you think there's going to be more? Well, this gets into, the unknowable question of what the size of the market will be like. Do you think there's going to be more consulting companies at that point?
I don't think so.
Really?
I mean, MediaWiki's been around a long time.
That's true.
And if you look at the number of companies that are more than just, single consultants, very, very few in all that time. So, we can try and figure out why, but I don't see a reason for why it would change.
Yeah. There is something to that. What about the chance that some major or semi-major consulting company, tech consulting company will start to offer MediaWiki as a solution? Will really, beyond just putting that on the list of things that they support, actually, get into the kind of stuff that we're doing?
Yeah, I don't see MediaWiki being a big target for them. There's so many other solutions out there that are more corporate. Why would they, take on all the challenges that we're dealing with if you don't have to, right? We already have the technical expertise and the passion and knowledge for MediaWiki. So, we're willing to take on that challenge. But if they're already a big company and they're servicing other products, I don't see why they would take on MediaWiki with everything that it brings.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. I mean, ultimately, it comes down to a question of money, and if the number of users gets is 100 times bigger 5 years from now, then a lot of things will change, I assume.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I can tell you also, it's going to require a major investment from them to find developers, and probably have to train developers from scratch, because I'm always, trying to find good developers, and it's extremely difficult. It's not just that there aren't that many MediaWiki companies. There are very few professionals who are really skilled in MediaWiki.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that too. We both had trouble finding people, and I guess this podcast is a good way to let people know that that we are looking. And I guess in general, you can say that if anyone's considering going into MediaWiki consulting or MediaWiki consulting and development, it's a good field to get into. Obviously there are a lot of volunteer developers, and I'm always amazed by the quality of the patches that come into my extensions, often from people who don't even really, I think, care that much about my specific extension. Right. They just like to fix problems in the software. Yeah, I don't know. Do you feel like the people? I know you've gotten people from that volunteer developer world. Yeah, I don't know. What's the issue there? Why aren't there more volunteer developers getting into MediaWiki consulting, either with one of our companies or other companies, or just on their own? Do you think? Do you think people just don't want to get involved, or they don't know, or what?
Well, I'm not sure I agree with the question so much. I don't know that there are so many volunteer developers that don't eventually get picked up by someone. I know we've picked, right, like you said, we picked up some at WikiTeq, and I'm sure they love being at WikiTeq, because we love having them because they're so passionate about MediaWiki. They're willing to volunteer their time to do it. And it's a great match when they're joining WikiTeq. They get to do something they love, and now they're actually getting paid for it. And I think some of them are ending up at the different consulting companies, and I would say probably a lot of them end up at the Wikimedia Foundation. So
well, yeah, there's right.
I don't know of too many volunteers that stay volunteers. And if you do know of any, please let me know, because we'd love to have them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there are people listening to this from all over the world. So yeah, if anyone wants to start doing consulting work, well, I can put your contact info there on the
right.
podcast.
Or you could put your contact info.
All right. I guess
we'd love to have you too.
Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. What's the big need as far as you're concerned? Is it people who know how to do development, or people who know how to create data structures, or people who are good at talking to clients, or anything specific?
I would say it's two things. Even when we bring in volunteers from like let's say patch code review world, so they know very well how to review patches, and they may even know how to create extensions. But what we have a bigger need for is people who know everything about MediaWiki, who have that global scope where they can be faced with a problem and immediately know, okay, that can be solved with this extension, and I know that if I install that extension, I'm going to have this problem which can be solved in this way. As somebody with experience, understanding MediaWiki from the administration standpoint is one major need. And then you need to find someone who can also work in a team and be able to work with other people and have that attention to detail that they can deliver a quality product. So that's hard to find. There aren't too many people who really have that much experience in the administration side. And usually those people are technical people. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's common, but it often happens that technical people are not necessarily good at the business side of things. To be able to, produce, the correct solution on time, up to spec and everything like that, and be able to work with others, reach out when they have questions, and be able to answer questions for others when they have them. So it's one of the challenges, I guess.
Yeah. As far as the pure development, do you find that the need for that has decreased over time as the extensions become more mature and better? Hopefully, I don't know. Or is there always the need for some various things that nothing supports at the moment?
Yeah, I'll again have to disagree with the question. Extensions situation is not very good.
Okay.
Extension, core MediaWiki is really well maintained, and for the most part, the patches, the extensions that are bundled with MediaWiki are very well maintained. Although, WikiTeq just recently fixed a major bug in the math extension. I mean, you would think the math extension has no bugs. And
Yeah, it's in use on Wikipedia.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
we
Wow.
found a major bug that, was apparently just fixed a bunch of fabricator tasks.
Oh wow.
So there are exceptions, but as a general rule, those extensions are very well maintained. Everything else, they're not necessarily well maintained. They're not necessarily well written. And that's a big issue. And one of our pushes, we're trying to sort of adopt extensions slowly, especially extensions in use by our clients. Part of that, like enterprise level support, that maintenance support, we're trying to build extension maintenance into those support agreements where, we tell clients, if you're using an extension, we guarantee you that someone's going to support it. And if nobody's supported, we're going to be doing the support. So that's sort of one of our pushes, is to try to fix up that whole extension situation. It's not very good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, WikiTeq has developed and maintains a lot of extensions. Yeah. Very roughly, how many WikiTeq extensions are there, quote unquote, at this point?
It really depends on how you count. It's a few dozen, I would guess.
Wow.
I myself have written, I think, close to 40 that have been publicly released. Most of them are pretty terrible, and for a pretty terrible use case. I write extensions because people tell me to write an extension, not because I think it's a good idea. So then they may not be very popular. So, I think that goes for a number of the WikiTeq extensions, but there's still, if somebody found it useful, chances are someone else will. So somebody should maintain it. All the work went into creating it, so you might as well make sure that it stays relevant. And I would say the biggest barrier to upgrading is extensions, because you may, for whatever reason, people love installing extensions. I strongly discourage it wherever it's possible. And that's something I spoke
Yeah.
about also in San Francisco.
Wait, you strongly discourage installing extensions?
Yeah, unless you have to, don't install it, because the problem is you're going to install an extension and then it's going to work great until you have to upgrade.
Well, yeah, sure,
And
sure.
and now what? So if the extension is well maintained, then great. But if it's not, so then we have people coming to us. We had someone come to us that was still on version 1.16 recently.
Yeah,
and
okay,
people are
that's
routinely
10
coming
years
to us
ago or
around like 1.22 or something.
Right.
And the reason is very simple. They may have even tried to upgrade in the past, and it was just too daunting because they had all these extensions that just stopped working. They had no idea what to do to fix it. And as time goes on, the task becomes bigger and bigger, and eventually impossible. And they reach out to us, and now it's a major problem. So one of the things we're doing actually now, we have these support agreements that give you permanent upgrades. They'll give you a guarantee that whatever wiki you have right now, you'll be able to upgrade to the next major version whenever it's released. So basically every 2 years, we guarantee we're going to upgrade to the next major version. And the way we do that is we say, whatever extensions you have, we're going to make sure it's maintained in the interim.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, which can be a real challenge. Sure. Yeah, and of course we both have had the experience of hearing from somebody, a potential client or an actual client who, when you go to see their special version page, they have 20 custom extensions that they've created. That one person who may or may not still work at the company created all these extensions for them, which is even worse, probably usually.
Right. Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, it was probably not needed to have an extension to solve whatever task they were trying.
Right.
They
That's
didn't necessarily have, a professional with the experience to be able to see that. And that also means that whoever created the extension wasn't a professional. They may have been a professional programmer who didn't know much about Mediawiki. And therefore, even if the extension works, it's not well written and not future proof. And since it wasn't released as open source, which most of the time these custom extensions aren't, nobody maintained it, and it's a little bit of a disaster. So and sometimes you don't even have custom extensions. You have people who modified core Mediawiki and don't even know what modifications were done. So that's even a bigger headache, because all of a sudden you upgrade them and everything stopped working. You have no idea why. Well, because they modified the wiki files themselves, and all those modifications get lost on upgrade. So
yeah,
upgrading is a daunting task. And if we tie everything together, one way to get Mediawiki to be more user friendly, to be more attractive, is to get that maintenance on there that says whatever is being done to your wiki is being done by a professional. It's being watched by a professional, maintained by a professional, and you'll never have a problem ever again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the big things that you brought to WikiWorks, and now with WikiTeq 2 is really that concept of guaranteed support, guaranteed upgrades and all of that, which is really critical. Yeah, I mean, because that's in the past that's stopped even major wikis from upgrading. Yeah. Because they get.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to call them out, but you look out there, you'll see wikis with many users who are on an unsupported branch of Mediawiki, right?
Right.
And that, as a community, that should be a challenge to us. How do we allow that to happen, and how do we prevent that from happening? How do we make the upgrade process easier? How do we make sure extensions stay maintained? So that's all things that we're trying to improve.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it would be helpful to have some kind of organization in place, something that that takes ownership of various extensions? People have done that to some extent, or people have talked about it, but some kind of seal of approval. I mean, I guess you already have that with WikiTeq, obviously. Right. If the name WikiTeq, I'd like to think if the name WikiWorks shows up also, but definitely with WikiTeq, if it shows up next to an extension page on mediawiki.org, then it's gonna it's maintained. It's gonna keep getting maintained.
We certainly hope so. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a very good step in the right direction. I think there are other companies also doing it, putting on the extension page, like this is actually either it's bundled with MediaWiki, of course, or it's it's in use on Wikimedia Foundation wikis, or there's a professional company behind this. So people know, okay, this is safer to install than other ones. But definitely you're right. If there was some kind of foundation that, was watching over, especially the enterprise extensions that have no use to the foundation, to be able to watch those and
right,
make sure
to the Wikimedia
and
Foundation. Right. Yeah.
that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And we're not there yet. So until we're there, we're trying to do what we can. We may never get there, but I think this is a great system also, where you have different companies putting their weight behind different extensions, giving people confidence that, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. What are some of the WikiTech extensions? What are, some of your greatest hits?
So to plug some of our extensions, I mean, there are some that, I think are amazing. One is called User Protect. And I think the big advantage of it is that it's easy to use. So in essence, if you think about it, MediaWiki, if you want to protect an individual page, so you can't give that level of protection to a certain user. You can give it to a group. You can say only administrators can only edit this page. But if you want to say only this person can edit this page, you'd have to create a custom group just for that person. And obviously at a certain point, that becomes impossible. So we basically took that concept and extended it to users, where you can have like per page, per write, per user level permissions. So, and it's an extremely easy interface to use. And I'm hoping, there's so many like user rights extensions out there. I'm hoping that this could become more of a standard, because it's really good at, and it doesn't disable caching like a number of the extensions out there use. And, we're standing behind it. So I'm hoping it'll go somewhere.
Yeah.
The one thing that it doesn't do is it doesn't prevent reading of certain pages, which is something everybody wants. And we're not comfortable moving into that territory yet, because we're not comfortable that we can guarantee that it'll actually work, right? There's so many, to try and prevent people from reading certain pages is very difficult to do on a technical level and make sure there are no security holes. MediaWiki wasn't built to be able to do that. And also from a philosophical point of view, if you're trying to hide data from users, MediaWiki is probably not the solution for you,
Sure.
And to a certain extent, you can do it. But if you really need that much fine-grained detail on who can read what and which user, it's probably not a good use case for MediaWiki anyway. So we haven't put that much effort into that. So that would be one extension I'd highlight. And one, the Save Spinner extension, I think is a good example of just, increasing usability. What it does is when someone clicks Save Page, well, sometimes that could take a long time to save a page.
Right.
And the user doesn't necessarily see that anything is happening. And, for us, as developers, as technical people, we know, obviously, the page is being saved. We can see the subtle hints, the browser is loading kind of.
Right.
But you'd be surprised, non-technical users have a real problem with it. And they, they're not sticking around to see that it ended up getting saved. Even if, there's that big confirmation box it was saved, it's very confusing to them. So the Save Spinner will give them a little spin the entire time while the page is being saved. And they know that something's happening, then they don't have to click anywhere else. So, one of the things that MediaWiki has a reputation for is that it's not easy to use. And to a certain extent, that's a well-deserved reputation. And sometimes you can have something that's that simple that just gives people confidence that, I can work with this software.
Sure.
I can be confident that what I'm doing is happening.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Those little things can be really important. And a lot of times when users don't even consciously know, that that's something that they don't understand what's going on, but they can subconsciously, it adds up.
Right.
All the little frustrations like that can really add up and decrease people's confidence or enjoyment.
Yeah, and that's the importance of working with a user base, working with clients. We as developers would never have figured that out, right? So we're learning from our clients as much as we're providing solutions for them. We're learning how we can improve what we're doing. We're learning how MediaWiki can be improved.
Yeah. By the way, this sort of that actually that last thing gets into Project Canasta to some extent, because that's the kind of extension where a lot of people just will never know about it, or never. Well, hopefully this will increase the word about it. Administrators will never think to install it, but if it comes pre-packaged and we say this, we can just package it and say this is what we recommend for everyone to use for this kind of use case. Then then it's just automatic and yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's not and it's the kind of thing that it's such a subtle improvement to your wiki that is it really worth installing an extension to do that?
Right.
And, you have that. You have to weigh. What's going to happen with this extension? Is it going to break something else? And if you have a solid distribution that's well supported, so then people will go ahead and install this. They'll install that distribution.
They won't even be aware that it's an extension. Quite possibly, they'll just say, "Okay, cool, this works."
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of a preview. One of the things we're working toward is not even having administrators to MediaWiki. We really want to. At WikiTeq, we're really trying to make MediaWiki a real, software as a service solution where, we provide everything in one. Where right now we provide hosting and we provide maintenance and we provide development, and try to combine those three products into one where all you need to do is just click a button and you have a wiki and it's professionally maintained and you have all of the, that bundle, all of those features are already there. So that's something we're working very hard on right now.
Okay, wait, sorry, can you explain that again?
So we're trying to package everything into one. You're saying
right. Okay, sorry.
If you have a bundle that people can install it and they have everything, we're trying to even avoid the installation. We're trying to say you just click a button and it'll set up your wiki for you. Sure. And you'll have that really, really cool bundle with everything ready to go. And, it'll be, cached well, all the improvements that we have to do on an individual basis for individual sites to make sure it's running well, that it's got the monitors on there and it's.
Right. That's the kind of thing.
Everything is set up to run well, that, it's just there.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Which is what we're trying to do with Project Canasta too, but
well, I didn't understand Project Canasta is trying to move into hosting too much, although.
You're hosting as well. No, absolutely. Sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. But that is a goal, is to enable people at least to more easily set up their own hosting if they want. Yeah. But that's not part of the project. Yeah, sure. Cool. Yeah. Well, okay, great. Yeah, dozens of extensions, and of course, you've created a bunch of WikiWorks extensions too. I guess when you said 40 extensions or something, that includes both WikiTeq and WikiWorks and just some others as well.
Yep. WikiWorks and WikiTeq, we've been cooperating, I guess, for a long time. I guess even before WikiTeq was called WikiTeq, and it was just me.
Well, okay, yeah. How long has WikiTeq been around?
It's got to be 2 years.
Yeah. Cool. Just a random question. You call yourself the CTO of WikiTeq, but not the CEO, even though, of course, you are the CEO of WikiTeq. But I mean, functionally speaking, is there reasoning behind that?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously I'm the owner of the company, but I don't want to call myself the CEO, and I'm not sure that I am the CEO. I don't know if I'm doing a good enough job to really be able to credit myself with being the CEO. I guess if one day I learn the skills, I can promote myself. But I think that right now I'm just not fulfilling the CEO role, And, we have an amazing team of people who are all chipping in to fill that CEO role. There's no one person, including me, who can say, I'm the CEO. We're all helping out with everything. We're all working together. And I don't, view myself as necessarily, the supervisor of anybody. Everybody's really good at what they do and they all work together. So, I call myself the CTO because I think that's a much more accurate description of what I do. I am a technical guy and I am working with the technical team. And a lot of the other tasks, even if I'm signing off on them and, paying for them, they're being done by someone else.
Well,
so I don't think I'm the CEO. And also I feel a little bit uncomfortable calling myself the CTO also. I mean, we're not a massive corporation. I guess everybody does it. So, it's something that clients expect, that there would be a CTO. But I guess calling myself a CTO is more realistic than calling myself a CEO.
Yeah, okay, right. I guess fine. There's certainly companies where it's, two people or one person where they try to make themselves look larger than they really are. There's a very interesting business book called Getting Real from, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, maybe, that where they really advocate against that and say, you should play to your strengths. And if you're a small company, then you shouldn't hide that fact. And, because small companies have a lot of advantages and or bigger companies also,
Yeah, I mean, you kind of owe it to your clients to be honest with them.
Sure.
As much as possible. Obviously, you're not going to be a total open book, but as much as possible, they should understand. We don't have 100 employees. We have this, very big, like, CEO kind of guy. We're a small group of good people who work together, and very often that's much better. Like you're saying, it's much better than being a big company. Sometimes the more people you add to a project, the more difficult it is. And
if
you have a big company, things tend to take longer and not to be done as well in the end. You have a small company, it's like a very good medium where you're not relying on one person to know everything, but at the same time, it's not so many people that you need like multiple levels of management to bring everything together.
Yeah. We had a project where, I'm not going to get into any details, but we were the subcontractor for a very large company. And when it came time to getting paid, we ended up dealing with, I can't even remember now. It was over 10 people, all each saying, "Oh no, you should talk to this other person."
Yeah.
It's a large company. It's a large tech company based in the United States.
Yeah, and I have a great story that's sort of related to that, and also related to the need to know everything about everything that we discussed earlier. At one time I was doing a project for a massive corporation, and I was doing it on my own. This is a few years ago. I was on my own, and I always felt like I could never tell a client I don't know how to do that. Like, it's my responsibility to know everything.
Right.
But they wanted to implement single sign-on with Active Directory, and I really didn't know much at all about Active Directory. I knew a little bit about LDAP, but not much about Active Directory. And I certainly had no idea how this company's Active Directory was set up. So I basically, at that point, I sort of drew the line, and I said, I need somebody who understands your Active Directory. I can't do this without them. So, I mean, the first task was finding somebody who was that person, right? Finding somebody who knew their own Active Directory. It took them weeks to find someone, and then it took them even longer to find, an open slot in their schedule. So weeks later, we finally got a meeting with the Active Directory guy, and when we described what we were trying to do, he said, I only know Active Directory from the server side. I don't know anything about it from the client side. You're trying to do client side, I said, I mean, that sort of was a big lesson to me, that, like, you really don't have to know everything. I mean, this guy made a career out of knowing Active Directory and only Active Directory and only half of it. So
Right.
there's a little bit of a lesson in the advantages of being small, where we all know each other. It wouldn't take us very long to figure out who knows what. And also where everybody, knows a little bit about everything, at least, where, we're not so highly specialized that, we become unhelpful.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Well, so you switching gears a little. You're a rabbi, and I guess not currently practicing, but that's what you have training as a rabbi. And actually, I have this book that you put out.
I can't believe you have it.
You have it's sort of lectures or insights into philosophy based on wisdom from the Bible, which it came out about, I think, around the same time as my book, is working with Mediawiki, 2012, something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a much bigger distribution than mine.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's any wisdom from the Bible or the Talmud or something that you think might apply to what we're doing with wikis or consulting or open source, anything business, anything relevant.
Well, I hope everything I said comes from the wisdom of the Talmud, and I feel like I spent a lot of years studying it, and I was privileged to serve communities in New York and Las Vegas, and learned a lot from those experiences, working with people, trying to help people, and ultimately that's what we're doing. That's what we're all doing. We're all trying to help people and help each other. So hopefully everything I shared is a result, at least somewhere, from a lot of the time, at least, I spent studying to be a rabbi and being a rabbi. And I would say, my rabbinic career, I haven't retired fully. I'm between jobs, we'll say. I hope that one day I'll be privileged to be doing that full time again, as well as running WikiTeq full time. So we'll see where it takes us.
Yeah, that would be great. I guess that's an alternative answer for my where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years question.
I guess so. But the wisdom of the Talmud, it actually touches on everything in life. There's nothing that a human can do that you can't find it somewhere in the Talmud that it would direct you. As long as you have mastery of it, which I certainly don't. But I'm trying to learn more and more. I'm still trying to learn as much as I can.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that. I thought of two things that might be relevant. I'm curious to hear what you think. There's a quote that's used a lot with sorry. There's a quote that's used a lot in Jewish circles, I think, which is it's something like well, I can say it in Hebrew, but it's something like, it's not up to you to complete the work, but you're not free to desist from it either, which I think has a lot of it's used a lot to justify volunteering and all that kind of stuff, but I think there's a it ties into everything, but I think there's an applicability to open source, that kind of thing, that everyone has some sort of moral responsibility to chip in to the extent that they can. I guess that's been used. When you really get down to it, I think it's been used to justify, Marxism and that sort of thing, but might be taking it too far. But just in terms of the idea of everyone volunteering to help in one way or another.
Yeah, so there's a danger in taking one line out of a Talmudic teaching and deciding that we understand how that should be applied to a particular situation, like Marxism or something like that. You know,
Right.
you wouldn't necessarily trust a layperson to be able to take one line out of a medical textbook and decide that they know
Okay.
how to,
Yeah, that's
you know,
fair.
how it applies. You know, it takes years of study just, you know, to gain the skills to be able to know how to apply it and to know, you know, I have this line that seems to be telling me this thing, but you know, there are five other contradicting lines, right, from other parts of the Talmud. So how do you get those all to mesh, right?
Yeah.
And if you have the skill and you understand all those other places, you'll be able to see very easily that there's not a contradiction. That particular line to me uh, doesn't really mean anything related to what you were suggesting. No offense. To me,
Okay.
it's still a very good lesson for us, which is, you know, you don't have the ability to decide success. You know, God decides success. Um, or, you know, if you come from a more secular standpoint, you know, the world and, you know, circumstance is all going to decide success. At the same time, you give it your best. And if you give it your best, then that's a success on its own. You know, you tried your hardest. You know, everything that we're doing, we're trying to, you know, make a wiki. We're trying to allow collaborative knowledge sharing. We're trying to create successful companies. We can try our best and there's no guarantee that we're going to be successful. And if we're not successful, we can easily say, well, we failed. Well, it was never really up to us to be successful in the first place, to be able to say, well, you know, I failed at that. If you really gave it your best and you did it well, then ultimately, if it doesn't work, the fact that you did it the best you could is a success on its own.
Yeah. 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 No, that's very good. That's uh yeah, there's a lot of yeah, in the tech world, it's very easy to get dissuaded, and you know, there's a lot of people who have what's it called, imposter syndrome, and all of that, thinking that they're not as good as others, and so forth. I think that's a good you know, yeah, something good to always have in mind. Yeah. Um, the other thing that I was thinking of is the Tower of Babel story, which I guess, I mean, has a lot of potential application to anything involving international stuff and multilingual and all of that. If I mean, if I can explain the story briefly, if I understand it, the idea is there were people at a certain point in time. They all spoke the same language, and they had what the Greeks or we would call hubris, the thinking that they could, you know, build a tower that reached all the way up to heaven and sort of, you know, compete with God to some extent. So he was not a fan of that, and made everyone essentially speak a different language, and you know, caused the whole project to fail completely. Um, yeah, I don't know. To me, it has a lot of interesting. There's a very interesting metaphor there with social media, where you know, which is you know, a whole a project instead of websites that are supposed to bring everyone together, but seem to have just, you know, caused these massive divisions and alienation. I don't know if there's a direct tie into wikis or Wikipedia or anything. Yeah, I don't know what you think
Yeah,
of
here
all
I
that.
think that's actually an excellent application that I hadn't considered.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but if you look at that book you were holding a couple minutes ago, you don't have to do it now, but in the second chapter, you'll see I have a little bit of an essay about the Tower of Babel. And again, I don't want to get too political, so I'll just hint to what I'm saying. But actually, the goal, according to some understandings of it, everybody wanted to be unified. And maybe that was kind of the idea behind social media, to bring people together. The goal there was everybody to be unified. They didn't want to be spread over the entire earth. They wanted to all have that tower where they'd all be in one city, and wherever they were, they'd have that tower to kind of focus their attention, to bring them back to that city, where everybody could kind of be united in one goal and never split up into different nations, with everyone having their own language and their own culture and everything like that. And it wasn't necessarily a terrible thing that they did. It was wrong, but you could see that God didn't destroy them. All he did was he destroyed the tower and he created different languages for everybody to enforce the fact that we need the different cultures and we need the different languages and all of them to develop. And, you might look at that and say, well, that's not good. Isn't that not unity? And I think the message is that unity comes from different people and different nations and different companies that are different, distinct, all having different talents and different desires. And then they work together. That's true unity, not everyone just being the same.
Yeah. It's very interesting. There's certainly some lessons there. I guess I would point at some connection to WikiWorks and WikiTeq, but that a little.
Yeah, I hinted at a few
obvious.
things. As a Talmudic axiom, Tein l'chacham b'yech kamod. You give somebody a wise person, you give them the basics, and they'll be able to figure out the rest.
Okay.
So
All right.
anyone who's listening is free to apply that to their own situation and social media and other things.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of it. There's a lot of applications to a lot of these stories and teachings. Well, very good. I think this is a good. That's all my questions. I think this is a good place to end it. Is there anything you wanted to talk about? We've already talked for, I don't know, hour and a half or so.
Wow. I just want to express my thanks. I mean, first of all, to you again, everything that you did for me personally and for the Mediawiki community in general, not only the book and the podcast, but I mean, software-wise, page forms, all the enterprise type of extensions that make enterprise Mediawiki even a thought. I think you get a lot of credit for that. And some of the other projects that you've started and maybe aren't still around, as we said, that's a success also. So thank you for all of those as well. And just to thank the community, I'm very fortunate being somebody who's passionate about Mediawiki and passionate about collaboration, knowledge sharing, and being able to improve the world by everybody contributing what they know. I'm passionate about that, and I get to do it as a living, and that's amazing. And everybody I think listening to the podcast has some hand in that. Either they contributed to the software, or they're a user, or they're someone who's been a client of ours. You're all people who make this possible, and I'm very fortunate to have you. Thank you very much for everything you've done for me.
Well, that's great. No, I totally agree. It's very easy to take for granted all the ways that this entire community of hundreds of people has helped us and continues to help us all the time. And those are thanks for all the nice words. Also, it's really great to hear from you. And we have a strong bond. We've been bonded together through a lot.
We're old war buddies.
We sure are.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Ike, thank you very much for being on the podcast. I'll talk to you again before long, but it was great talking to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. We did it.
All right. I was thinking